So welcome to this podcast with me, Chris Jones, and Matt White. I'm the founder of the London Screenwriters Festival. I'm a filmmaker, screenwriter, and we're here to talk about Talent Campus today, which is the professional development total immersion program from the London Screenwriters Festival. Just to give you a little context, it was set up in 2015 with the support and inclusion of Screen Skills. As it was then, it was called Skill Set. And Screen Skills have continued to support us over the years. Having said that, we haven't run Talent Campus since 2019 because of the pandemic and because I got busy directing Splinter Unit on Mission Impossible and various other things that got in the way. But we are back with a vengeance. And I wanted to invite past Talent Campers to talk about their post Talent Campus experiences, because I ran a survey last year speaking to the 200 and so screenwriters, filmmakers, producers who'd been through the Talent Campus program about what they wanted post Talent Campus, post pandemic as well. And the number one thing everybody wanted to hear was success stories from their peers. So we're here with Matt to hear about his success stories post Talent Campus. Welcome, Matt. Whereabouts in the world are you?
Thank you, Chris. It's lovely to be here. I am in the beautiful village or town of Llanelloes in the depths of mid Wales, which I found out recently is the first place in written history to have a maypole. And given that I'm working on a TV show at the moment about a May Day ceremony that goes supernaturally wrong, that's a pretty cool place. That's a pretty cool coincidence to find.
Amazing. Now, I don't want to start on Talent Campus. I want to get straight into your successes, but in 20 seconds, just give me a snapshot of when you did Talent Campus and what was maybe one of the big things you got out of it.
Yeah, I did Talent Campus in 2019. I was part of the TC5, and amongst other things we'll talk about, I got the most awesome network of friends that I've ever made in this industry, and we still communicate every day to this day.
Okay, so let's go back to post 2019, and you've come out of Talent Campus, and there are two very very specific stories we want to talk about. One is a feature film that got made, and another is a whole kind of pitching journey. But let's dive in on your feature film. So tell us about the feature film and how it came about.
Okay, so the feature film is called Paul Dude's Deadly Lunch Break, and it was based on an idea I had way back in about 2011 that I'd been developing for years with a good mate of mine, Nick Gillespie, who's a filmmaker and director. And it started out as a sort of real-time, very dark thriller that became funnier and funnier the more I tried to work on it, because of the fact that I just thought the actual reality of a spree killing, if you try and achieve it and somebody's actually watching you trying to do it, as it were in the film, there's a lot of scope there for black humor. And it was Nick who said, just turn it into a comedy. So we did. We played around with it for years. We developed it. And then Nick worked with a producer called Finn Bruce on a couple of projects. And so the film was actually shot in late 2019. And one of the great things about someone like Nick being just a great example of networking, just being such a lovely guy and having worked with so many people and made such a good reputation for himself by just being nice and very professional, was that loads of amazing actors got on board to make the film with us. So it's starring Tom Meaton, and we had people like Alice Lowe, Johnny Vegas, Pippa Middleton, Chris Marshall, Craig Parkinson, all of these great people turning up and volunteering to be offed in all kinds of gruesome ways. So it's filmed in late 2019. It was post-production took a long time during 2020 because obviously we had things like the pandemic getting in the way, and I had to do some reshoots and some extra footage. But then in 21, it was released to festivals and played by South by Southwest. That's where it had its global premiere, which was amazing, and we won the Screenwriters Award there, so it's sort of the best screenplay. And then it played at various festivals, including Toronto After Dark and Fantasia, and now it's on Sky, so you can watch it on Sky in the UK, and it made it onto Shudder in the States, which is amazing. So it sort of flitted around the various streaming platforms in the States for a while, but then Shudder got their hands on it, and suddenly there's a new resurgence of interest in it, because it is a dark enough black comedy to make it as a sort of horror adjacent thing. And so there were watch parties taking place on social media, and if I go on Reddit now and Google Paul Dude, which I do because it's a big ego thing, people are still talking about it. So yeah, it seems to find a pretty happy home out there in the general ether.
And in terms of what you took from Talent Campus and what you learned, if you were to stand, because one of the things that the London Screenwriters Festival and Talent Campus, what I personally feel very passionate about is it's all well and good to hear from Sir Ridley Scott and the likes, and it's amazing. But often the best learning comes from somebody who's just one or two rungs up the ladder above you. So if you were to talk to someone who's maybe yourself in 2019, experienced,
Mm.
got passion and talent and capability, looking for that first big break, what do you think? What would you do differently now in order, based on the experience you've had on Paul Dude?
I would say take on board the messages around relentlessness a bit more. So as Talent Campus, a lot of it is about, and I remember describing it like this, and I still do. It's the most awesome cult I've ever joined in my life, and I've not joined many, so I can't compare it to many. But a lot of it, as you know, is about self-actualization, and it's about projecting the vision and a vision of yourself, which is amazing and awesome, and then just living up to that vision and letting the world see it. And there were times, I mean, we were in the middle of lockdown, but when after the film came out, I approached a few companies, particularly in the States, who'd made sort of adjacent kinds of movies and tried to make contact with them and said, let's build up a working relationship. And nothing really came of it because I wasn't relentless enough, because I didn't approach enough people, because I didn't push it hard enough. And it was sort of, I went through a phase of falling back away from the lessons of Talent Campus a little bit, where really there should have been 50 to 100 emails going out to people, contacts with people who'd been at South by Southwest, who'd been at Fantasia, who'd been at the various festivals, who may have seen it or had films, in competition there, and building up those connections and just making friends with those people and saying, let's have a chat and let's start, sharing ideas and look at this thing, and isn't it great, and I love what you did, and let's help each other out in the world. So looking back on the Talent Campus, me, I'd have said those lessons about that, use them and be more beautifully ruthless, I'd say.
I love that phrase, beautifully ruthless. Of course, that's where the peer group comes in,
Yeah.
and having again, I didn't think I was going to talk so much about Talent Campus now,
Mm,
but one of those things that really shines through is that as writers, we sit at our desk, and yes, we've got friends and we've got peers and relationships,
mm,
but very often we don't have like 10 people who are kind of nudging you and
mm.
saying, where you at, come on, let's going, and
Yeah.
you don't feel like you're in a clan of people pushing forward together.
Yeah, absolutely. And you think sometimes about the mentality or the behavioral patterns that drive people to be writers, and the attraction of, you know, the idea of a sort of a little cottage in the middle of nowhere or a desk in a really cool creative space, and you can just sit there and make magic, and then that's all you have to do and you get paid for it. And so I'm working on a film project with my friend Kelly Holmes, who's a director, which we'll talk about in a bit. And we've reached a little bit of a point where we made some major changes to the structure, and the story wasn't really developing. So Kelly just said, "Come stay with me for the weekend." So I've just got back yesterday. She lived down in Nottinghamshire, so we spent a weekend together, and we've just smashed the whole thing in about a day and a half of working, because we've made that effort to be with each other, and we were keeping each other accountable for doing good stuff. And so, yeah, that idea of having people around you, and it's not just about networking with people to sell scripts and to make business. If I want to set a target for myself, I go on WhatsApp and I talk to the TC5 group, Talent Campus 5 group, and say, look, I want to do this by this date. And you can guarantee that 5 people a couple of days before will be saying, come on, get your finger out. Have you done it? Have you done it? And we're constantly sharing. One of the members of the group came that close to winning a pretty cool screenwriting competition, and the way in which they found out they didn't win it was quite aggravating. So of course, we're piling on with building them up again and saying, this was amazing that you got that far, and we feel your pain, because we've been through it with you, but we can keep going together. So it's definitely that idea of, you've got to step out of this mindset of, my desk is the be all and end all, and I can just send great scripts out and people will come to them. You've got to constantly be making friends and being friends, being useful to people and helping and sharing and cajoling, and you put it out without expecting to get it back,
Right.
and that in itself is a value.
Yeah, be the friend you want to have.
Yeah.
It's so critical. And so let's just talk about Paul Dude again.
Yeah.
And as an unproduced writer,
Mhm.
who then became a produced writer and on a feature film during COVID. What are the big takeaways in terms of your journey that you think others could really learn from, either to prepare them emotionally, spiritually, or whether just on a craft level?
I think so. In terms of emotionally and spiritually, it's that idea of relentlessness and that journey. So Nick was a guy I'd met at Salford University, and we became really good friends. We made a couple of short films together, and we had a shared sort of love of particular kinds of film and filmmaking. And it took, I would say, 10 years between me first writing an outline for that script, that film, and it appearing at a film festival, and which is not bad going, for a British independent film. But it was about almost the fact that we'd meet up, because Nick moved down to London. I was in Manchester at the time, and we'd meet up every now and then, and he just kept saying, I still want to make Paul Dude. I still want to make Paul Dude. And we went through various dead ends with it. But it was like we always had it there in the locker, if that makes sense. So we moved on and we worked on other things, and Nick's made some great stuff, both as a DOP and a camera operator, and then as a director. And I was working on my own projects as well and doing things like, having my own life as well. But we always had that idea of somebody can talk to you, and this is a useful thing you can take out of this, is that film project, I had that pitch ready to go at any time. And as soon as somebody said, what have you got? What are you working on? What's available? That was one of 4 or 5 things I could say, right, let me tell you about Paul D. That was a really useful thing to know, to have that, even though we hadn't worked on it for a year or 2 years, it was still in the locker. I was still able to talk about it and pitch it and promote it. And that's what Nick did when he worked with Finn. They made a film together, and Nick said, right, now we've done this. This is what I want to do next. I want to do Paul D. So that was useful. The other thing I'd say from a working on a film perspective, I kind of got rewrote. It was my draft, my baby. Went to a big writing workshop thing actually at Finn's house, and he got a few friends of his in, and a guy called Brooke Driver, who was also a friend of his, was one of that group. And we sort of smashed the script a bit and went through it page by page over a couple of days. I went and did another draft, and then Brooke had a go on it, and Brooke added some pretty cool things to the story, but Nick also wanted to stay involved, and so we ended up having 3 people listed as co-writers. And from an ego perspective, that was quite hard to take. That immediately was me thinking, oh, that's my baby gone. And when you watch the film, I can see the bits that I wrote, I can see the bits that Nick and Brooke wrote when they worked on it afterwards, and I can still say it's my idea, and a lot of that basic idea and that story and that stuff and the theme and what it's all about is still there, but the bits they added made it better. And that was a really, really cool thing to accept. When you finally watch the film, you think, yeah, that's better than it was when I worked on it. The ending is much more coherent. A lot of people talk about the ending because it sort of breaks with tradition in a story like that, and it does things that you don't necessarily expect, but it's got a lot of depth and emotion to it, and none of that was in mine. Mine was horrible. So there's this idea of being rewritten, or knowing that you're part of a huge process, and also the way that Nick works with people, because he comes from a technical perspective. He's a camera operator, so he's incredibly on top of the technical process, but it also means he can make films quickly and efficiently and on the fly and still make them look wonderful. But he likes to do the same with his actors. He loves working closely with actors. He always tries to choose, for example, people who are gifted comedic actors, because he can say to them, there are going to be 3 takes on this, so we're going to work on it beforehand. What we need to achieve by the end of the script, and we'll have a version of a take which is the what needs to be done in terms of delivering the particular lines and the particular moments. But when you've got people like Alice Lowe and Johnny Vegas in a room, you're going to say to them, takes 2 and 3, off you go. And if you watch the outtakes at the end of the movie, some of the genius that these people are coming out with is just fantastic. So that's always going to change as well. That's always going to develop your work, and it's going to improve it. And sometimes you won't think it improves it, but from when a film gets made with that kind of stuff in and it becomes memorable, then it's improved it. So I think from a sort of professional perspective as well, I learned a lot about having the edges knocked off, and you keep your vision, but you also have to say goodbye to your vision at a point. And as Kelly, my friend, said, when that film's in the can, or the day you start editing, there's no longer a script. The script doesn't matter. The film is made in the edit, so the edit changes everything again. And so you get further and further away from the finished project, and you just got to suck it up as a writer. I'd say, you have to accept that. And then technically, right. I'd say from a craft perspective, we always knew what the film was about. We knew what the theme was. We knew what the vision was for the story. But when Nick says, and Finn say, because Nick had worked on Free Fire with Ben Wheatley, he's done a lot of Ben Wheatley stuff, and in that Nick had worked on a bit where a guy gets his head crushed by a van goes over his head, and they actually filmed the van going over this guy's head. And he said it was so cool, I want to do it with a steamroller. So, regardless of this beautiful set piece you've written, if your director and producer said, get rid of that and replace it with a steamroller, you're going, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I mean, and you got to make it happen.
Yeah. I mean, it all speaks to this concept that, writers sit at a desk and imagine and create
Yeah.
in a vacuum, not entirely,
Yeah.
but largely. And then it becomes a team sport.
Yes.
And it doesn't just become one or two. I mean, there is a transition from lone writer to lone writer with producer and maybe director. And then you got table reads. And then
Yeah.
suddenly it's 50 people.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then it's completely out of your control.
Yeah.
And then it enters post, and people stop even talking to you
Yeah.
because you're so distant from the actual trauma of making the film, that they kind of forget that you even existed in the process.
Yeah, yeah, and I worked on a short film which is playing at festivals at the moment called The Sin Eater. I wrote it, and it was directed by Kelly, my friend, and I was actually on set for that because it's a low budget short, So I'm doing sort of, what was I doing? Driving, craft services. I was the cook for the crew, all these kinds of various things, and it was awesome. But you really see how much influence the costume designer has on the story, and
Yeah.
the set dresser, and the person who does the lighting, and we had a load of setups to do in a church on the last day, and so the sound recordist is an absolutely key member of the story at that moment, because he may be able to record. But I say he because he was him on that day. They may be able to record some ambient footage, of crows in the background that will have an influence on the way it happens, and all this stuff can enhance the story as well. So,
Yeah.
and they've all got a right to do that, and to be amazing. And so it just can take, and all of that can chip away at your vision and make it something completely different. But as you said,
Yeah.
it's a team
And
project, isn't it?
it is a language thing, isn't it? Because I would say not so much chip away at your vision, but enhance your vision.
Yes.
It's
Yeah.
elevating and improving through other creative people, adding their skill, their vision, their thing to make what was once one thing something bigger, better, bolder, brighter,
Yes. Yeah.
and just
Absolutely.
more awesomeness.
Yeah. 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 And it's just, and then when you've got, I was getting script questions during the Sin Eater from Sharon Morgan, who is one of, she's sort of like the Judi Dench and the Helen Mirren times 10 of Welsh film and TV and theatre. When she's asking me questions about the script and about dialogue, that's definitely a dialogue between the two of us. That's not me as writer saying, no, these are the lines that have to be delivered. All I can say is, this is the history. This is why I wrote that bit. This is who it inspired me to say that. But please, Sharon, just go and make it, whatever you want to make it, because,
Yeah.
it'll be
And,
better.
you raise a really fascinating thing, and we talk about it on Talent Campus, which is how to effectively not get fired or uninvited
Yes.
from the process.
Yeah.
Because, it's incredibly valuable to have the writer on set, but there is definitely a way to not annoy people.
Yeah.
Because it's very easy to say, no, that's not the way I imagined it.
Yeah.
And it's kind of pointless to do that, because that may well be because the sun is in the wrong place, or it's raining, or the lead actors had a hissy fit last night and
Yeah.
are not talking to each other.
Yeah.
There's like a million really random things that can impact how a thing comes together. But to be able I think really it comes, and you've touched on this, to be able to witness and to offer insight, is an incredible gift to be given,
Mm.
and you become very humbled seeing what other craftspeople, other artists bring to the process,
Yeah.
and it's exhilarating.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's quite incredible to see, and to see it. I mean, it to do it in a way that it looks so mundane at the same time. When you realize how much time on set is putting scaffolding together,
Yeah,
and you've got this. We shot the Sin Eater in this tiny little beautiful old farmhouse up in I think it's called Greenfields Heritage Park up in North Wales, and you've got 15 people rammed into these tiny rooms, and then poor old Trevor the gaffer is outside in the wind and the rain with about 200, I don't know, a few tons of metal equipment and massive acetone sheets just to make sure that it looks like it's almost nighttime inside. And you just think, the big thing for Trevor that day was was able to get him a sausage sandwich. in the morning, and that was his sort of, because he was doing this, he'd come from major high budget things to come and work on this short with us. But it was like that mundanity is what fuels it.
Yeah.
And finding the right place to put the coffee cups out so they wouldn't get blown over in the wind, but anybody could just run out and grab a coffee, and just showing that level of consideration. So the main character has to drink beer because there's a sin eating festival, and beer is a festival, a ceremony, and beer is drunk there. Carly Sophia Davis, and so Carly needs something that looks like beer but isn't beer. So I went out and bought some Coke Zero because it's the same kind of color. It's like stout colored, but she said it's got caffeine in it. And this is a very high, finely pitched emotional moment. Can't drink caffeine right now. And all of those little moments of mundanity, and you think these people are fighting with it all the time and struggling with these things and overcoming them and still making something absolutely incredible at the end of the day. And as a practical tip for writers, get on set, be a runner,
Yeah.
go and see as much
That's
stuff
such
as
a
you can.
That's such a fantastic insight, isn't
Mm.
it? Be a runner and don't tell anybody you're the writer.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
And you will learn so much. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm a real proponent of, whatever's happening, stay involved so that you can learn. I
Yeah.
mean, you may not like what you learn, and it may not go the way you want it, but it's all part of the arsenal of knowledge that helps you improve as a creative, but also as an entrepreneur, a creative entrepreneur, and
Yeah.
that's who we have to be.
Yeah.
We can't just be siloed screenwriters anymore. We have to be more than that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let's talk about pitching as well, because
Yeah.
I know you had huge success with Sundance
Yeah.
with pitching.
Yeah.
What was your journey there?
So one of the things that led me to Talent Campus, and anybody who's developing a writing career knows that you have to be able to pitch, as I like to put it, you have to be able to tell your story in any situation. So, there's that great thing you do at the Screenwriters Festival where you the elevator pitch, where you literally get in an elevator with somebody. You don't know who it's going to be till you get in there. It could be Paul Verhoeven or somebody. So I went to Screenwriters Festival in 2013, and I did the elevator pitches, and I did a pitching session, and it all went really, really well because I was very confident in my public speaking abilities. And then a year later, I had a huge nervous breakdown whilst doing a presentation in a job, and it was a job with a company who's I'm not going to say what it was, but it's an industry I didn't necessarily want to work in. It wasn't evil, but I just didn't, it wasn't my world, and I'd never been in that sort of corporate and time is money kind of environment before. And I'm pitching in front of I'm presenting something I've been working on in front of about 50 people who are all very suited and booted and lovely, lovely people, but very different to me. And I just had a huge panic attack and walked out. And it's the most humiliating thing I've ever done in my life. And ever since then, I had terror over public speaking. And I'd done various things. I'd got a different job, and I had to do. It was a sort of remote job, so I was doing a lot of stuff over Zoom and its sort of ancestors. But there was always that terror there, and I could always do it remotely because I could look at my camera and not have to deal with anybody else. But I was hiding away from it, and my screenwriting suffered because I passed up opportunities to do things because I thought I'm going to have to tell strangers about my story. And one of the things that got me to Talent Campus was I thought I need to get out of this. I need to get out of this rut that I'm in, of this absolute terror of getting too highly strung and too overwhelmed. And one of the things I realized at Talent Campus, because I'd done all kinds of things like meditation and relaxation exercises and all that kind of stuff. And Talent Campus made me realize what I need to say is no, screw that. That is me. I will never slow my heart rate down. I've got a resting heart rate of about 42, and when I pitch, it's about 150, right? And that's never going to change. And that is my superpower. That whole Wonder Woman thing made me realize that energy is what works for me when I pitch. And if I try and suppress it, if it scares me, bad things happen. And sometimes if bad things happen, then that's life. And I'll carry on. So after Talent Campus, I put myself out there more, because one of the things you do is you put yourself into uncomfortable situations. And I'll give you, full context. That's not you go and bully people on the street, but you put yourself into situations that scare you a bit as part of the TC experience, surrounded by people who love you for doing it.
Yeah.
And so I started doing that more. And so I started taking opportunities to sort of promote and pitch again. And I was a finalist at Euroscript. And as part of that, they have a get together, and there are 3 pitching slots available, and you can apply and you can pitch an idea to people. So that's sort of 45 seconds or something, or a minute and a half in front of about 25 people in a pub. And that was the first step. That was terrifying. There was the Screenwriters Festival 2020, the online version that we did during
Yeah.
COVID, and I won the pitching competition there, and that was about 120 people in a room, but that was 45 seconds and just me and the camera. I could sort of turn everybody else off. So that was awesome. And then it just got bigger and bigger. But Sundance was a new level. So I went to Sundance London last year, and there was a pitching competition, and I thought, of course I'm going to sign up for it. It terrifies me, and I'm going to do it. And I did, and then I think 8 people got selected out of the 70 or the 50 who put in who said, oh, they'll do it. And of course, I kind of knew I was going to be the one of the 8. I don't know why, I just did. Got the email at the end of the first evening, so I go home, a couple of drinks, and then I was staying at a friend's place. And I actually have one of those things. I did 3,000 steps when I was practicing in the morning, and all the stuff I'd picked up from Talent Campus about creating the routines and creating the visual image of yourself that you want to have, and playing the music that you want to have going through your head, and creating that sort of physical reality of how you want to be at that moment. I did that in that apartment, listening to music, doing my pitch again and again and again. And the physical reality of this one was, it was another level up, because there's between 50 and 100 people in an auditorium, and you're on stage with a microphone, and there's no physical barrier. You can't sit down or anything like that. So yeah, I did it, and I pitched my so the short film I was talking about, the gothic horror that we made with Sharon Morgan in it and Carly Sophia Davies. It's called The Sin Eater, and it's a sort of bilingual Welsh Victorian gothic horror, and it's all about it's a folk horror about suppression and how suppressing things can cause horrible things to happen. And there's a feature film version of it, and I pitched that, yeah, and I won, and it was fantastic moment. It's really cool. I won. They had an audience prize and a judges prize. So there were people like Agent from CAA, and people who running various production companies and used to run the BFI and all that kind of stuff. So they judged me the winner, and the audience judged me the winner. So I got 2 sets of the same prizes. So I got back 2 bags of DVDs and 2 boxes of chocolates, which is cool.
Amazing. Amazing. So, I mean, looking back now, I mean, I was going to conclude on talking about Talent Campus,
Yes.
but we've done loads of talking about Talent Campus. Is there anything that we haven't discussed from your Talent Campus experience that you think is something to share, something that was of real value?
Yeah. So just to reiterate, the friends I've made and the self-actualization is amazing. But Talent Campus is also rammed with practical stuff about filmmaking. So there are negotiation exercises, there's pitching practice under pressure, which I'm not going to talk about because it gives away a big secret. There's that whole thing where you're doing that exercise where you've got to, you put into groups and you're making a film and you're throwing different scenarios at you, and how do you cope with this, and your star's just going to the airport, what do you say to the press? But there's also the fact that you get these speakers in. So we had Jed Mercurio, and we had, I'm trying to think of some names. I'm not going to do names because it'll take me too long and I'm awful with names. But we had people from TV development companies talking to us about the TV landscape. We had agents. We had
Did
writers.
You have Eleanor Green, if I remember?
I think we did, yes. Yeah. And Jean Kitson from Kitson
Jean
Press.
Kitson, she's coming back for the next one as well. Yeah,
awesome. She was cool, and so we had all of these, and of course we had John York, and I've got to say,
Hawley and
when Chris tells you how to welcome John York to the room, do it, right, because it's great fun.
He hates it.
But it was like the practicalities of it, and we did this great exercise where we were running through what the different TV broadcasters in the UK, what kind of things they look for when they're looking for a TV project. And we were then given the opportunity to take a TV show that and to describe the TV show now, and then say how we would change it for example, a Channel 4 show that was originally a BBC show, and things like that. And little things like that just stick with you, because I've just done the BBC Writers Voices development program, and we had people from the commissioning team and the insight teams at the BBC talking about what the BBC is looking for at the moment, and how they judge the quality and value of a TV show. And that was all coming back to me, the stuff from Talent Campus. They were using the same language and using the same approach. And so that element of it, it actually equips you with professional knowledge and professional practice and a professional mindset. And I think that's absolutely key. It gets you into the development process. It gets you used to getting feedback from people, which can be quite confrontational, and it gets you used to working with people. So I had Lucy Hay as my sort of script development mentor, and Lucy is as you know, is phenomenal, really great insight, incredible knowledge of the industry, and also honesty as long as the day is long.
Yeah.
Lucy will tell you what you need to hear, and that's not
Yeah.
necessarily what you think you need to hear. And so all of those things, that's learning how to be a professional screenwriter. So I think in terms of the practical lessons that you pick up as well, people often lose sight of that kind of thing, and you can't overestimate the value of that. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. You can't.
Yeah, I think you've covered the three, the three cornerstones of professional development. Just, I don't like the phrase personal development because I think it's a little bit, Californian, but
Yeah.
self-actualization, getting outside of your own skin, like
Mm.
being comfortable in discomfort,
Yes.
going to places, doing the things that other people won't do, in order to find success. And then that, just nuts and bolts of craft,
Yes. Yeah.
but craft from a producer's perspective, as opposed to an abstract 1970s 1980s screenwriting lecture
Yeah. Yeah.
perspective, which
Yeah.
I think excuse me, I think that really illustrates one of the other things that we've tried to do with Talent Campuses, like learn from the present and the immediate
Yeah.
past, and not so much the distant past, and try and kind of spell cast the future.
Yes.
Like, what is the future going to be like in 2025? And we obviously can't really tell, but there are signs, there are indicators, and there's interesting trends, starting to show up. So I just think it's really important that we're very future facing, and less so much about celebrating the past.
Yeah. Absolutely. And future proofing, because you can almost become too sort of, for example, too medium dependent.
Yeah,
If you've got that confidence, if you understand the mechanics of the way that the world works and the industry works, audio drama is exploding. If you are a good screenwriter, can write audio drama if they've never written it before, because A, you've got the humility to know you've got a lot to learn, but B, you've got the confidence to go and learn, to talk to people who've done it, to listen to things, to read those scripts. And it's about knowing that you'll have your own basic value, the self-actualization thing. What do I bring to the world as a writer? That can be delivered in all kinds of different contexts in different ways. A Matt White script is a Matt White script. A Chris Jones script is a Chris Jones script, regardless of,
yeah,
well, what kind of what technology is used to make it and develop it and share it with the world, and regardless of what medium is used, it will still be my voice and my values.
yeah, yeah. Brilliant. Okay, Matt, I think we've covered everything we planned to cover.
Cool.
Before we wrap it up, is there anything you think we should talk about?
Just when I read the title of this book, I hated it, but then I read the book and it was quite pivotal for me in a key moment in my life. Is feel the fear and do it anyway. And a lot of Talent Campus is feel the fear and do it anyway, because you'll be surrounded by awesome people who are there to help.
Right.
I think that's the way I'd put it. Yeah.
Amazing. That's fantastic, Matt. How can people find you then if they want
Me,
to, discover more about you and your amazing career?
I would suggest I'm most active on Twitter. I think my handle is Tree and Troll, which is a long story because I look like a troll and my wife's taller than me. So, it's tree underscore and as a word underscore troll. But if you Google for Tree and Troll, or Google Paul Dude, or Google the Sin Eater and that kind of thing, you'll find me on the
Amazing.
medias.
Fantastic. Well, Matt, thank you so much for your insight and your generosity, and we'll see you soon.
Amazing. Thanks, Chris.
All right then. Bye.
Cool. Cheers.